Hello, this is your host, Bill Raymond, and welcome to the TechGenics T-Suite podcast, where I talk to leaders in the tech industry. In today's podcast, I'm going to change things up a little bit. Companies large and small grapple with how to implement highly efficient teams. All too often, we focus on how we do the work, like incorporating agile practices or streamlining processes. However, no tools or processes are going to help if team members do not know how to work together. I recently attended the Technical Documentation Roundup and met some amazing people with some great ideas. Andrew started off the conference with a great energy and a desire to help people become better working with their teams. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Andrew Lawless. Oh, and one last thing, I had some audio issues, so I apologize up front for the background static. Welcome to the podcast, and I have with me here Andrew Lawless, Strategic Intervention Coach. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
Good.
Pleasure to be here. Very honored. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, all right, you had a lot of energy and you gave a great presentation, which is one of the reasons for why I wanted to talk to you today. Could you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a strategic interventionist coach for those who are not familiar with that. But strategic intervention is a coaching methodology that was developed by Tony Robbins and 5 partners. And I got certified through 2 of his partners, Maggie and Mark Pesha. And in addition to that, I'm a Kolbe professional consultant. I'm a finalist of the Kolbe Professional Award, and recognized for the change that I made in teams and people's lives using that methodology as well.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about what the Kolbe methodology is?
Yes. So do you know people that are very smart but don't get anything done?
Yeah.
Right? So what if you knew that in advance? Right? The reason they're not getting things done is because they're being asked to do things in a way that is not their natural way of operating. We call that MO. Mm-hmm. So what Kolbe measures is how you would take action if you had the freedom to be yourself. Mm-hmm. So most of the time, when you think about it, we don't have the freedom to be ourselves. It starts with school. So when you go to school, what do they tell you? What do teachers tell you? Do they say, you know what, Bill, sit down, talk to people, get shit done, talk to these guys, make things happen, negotiate deals or whatever? Or what do they tell you in school?
Oh, they just teach you.
Sit down and
learn
and listen, right? Yeah. And learn. Mm-hmm. And if you are good with dealing with a lot of information, and if you have a certain level of a high level of self-organization, you're going to do well. If you're a child that needs physical activity, and there's more physical than visual, for example, what happens today? You're going to be labeled, or the child is going to be labeled as having ADHD. And you get medicated. Mm-hmm. But it's the school system that failed you. And then, so first the school system fails you, then universities fail you, because the curriculums are made by what? Are made by people that have a high level of organization and are fact finders. Mm-hmm. Right? So, but these are only like 20% of people on this planet. 80% of the people do not have that cognitive, what you call cognitive wiring, to function in that way. So you
80%?
80%, right?
Oh.
So to be able to deal with a lot of data and then arrive a strategy from that, right? Or to plan and chart and graph everything and organize yourself in a way that you can get things done. I am, for example, a shortcutter, right? So I'm the opposite of that. If there's a shortcut that needs to be found, if you have a project that went bad and it needs to be still delivered on time, on quality, and on budget, I'm your man, right? If you need somebody who needs to put together a documentation workflow that is compliant with regulation, and you need to put into consideration all the resources and plan all of that and the dependencies, I would be your worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So when we enter the college and workplace, that's very often being asked of us. And for many of us, for decades sometimes, we feel like it's us. right? Have you ever felt that way? You go to
Yeah.
work, it's like, you know what? Everybody seems to be doing well. I'm just struggling, so maybe something is wrong with me, right? The fact is that nothing is wrong with you. You're perfect. I said that earlier here in my session today, where I think somebody compared your chances of being born with like 1 million people throwing 1 billion sided dice and throwing the same number at the same time. So your chances of being here is practically zero, yet you are. So something or somebody loved you enough, knew you were already enough, and you didn't have to ask for any of that. So you have inherent worth. Unfortunately, the way we work today, that feeling of self-worth is being taken away from people. We're literally killing people in our offices by forcing them to work in a certain way rather than enabling them to get the job done in a way that they would do best.
So you have a lot of empathy for people, it sounds. Where did you get that from?
Well, experience, right? So I remember it was in 1999, I worked for a company called Berlitz, which at the time was the largest provider of localization and translation services. And I was managing director for Central and Eastern Europe. And I was internationally the most successful manager. So ads, like annual meetings, like the CEO wanted me to sit next to him, like Japanese gentleman, you call it. And I got involved in everything. So I was the star, right? And then the World Bank in Washington, D.C. recruited me. And they headhunted me. I would have never, ever applied, right? So they headhunted me to run their global translation interpretation department. And they're going through a lot of change and needed a change agent from the private sector. And out of 80 people that they hired and 8 people that they invited into for interviews, there was like 2 days of interviews in front of 4 panels, plus the director and all of that. I got chosen, right? And so they flew me in and my family like first class, right? So on arrival, we got like a $15,000 check that I could just use for incidentals. I had corporate housing for a while so that I could figure out where to move. And then they sent me to Harvard Business School for 6 weeks to get trained by the head of faculty on change, right? So, and I'm great, right? So I come in, I walk into the World Bank building, as you see, like the marble everywhere and the museum, great statues. And I think I made it, right? It's great. So you're never going to fly coach again, like this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, sure.
5 years later, I left the World Bank divorced, totally mentally drained out. Totally stripped of my self-confidence, right? My mother passed away also during that year. So I suddenly found myself alone in my bachelor apartment, with only one plate, which I only used in emergencies, like when I couldn't find the ashtray or so, right?
Oh, wow.
So, and then as I got rehired by the World Bank as a consultant. That kept me afloat. And then I wanted to leave the bank totally because I wanted to build my own business. And then the financial crisis hit of 2008 and 2009. And long story short, I was 1 month away from not being able to pay my mortgage.
Wow.
Right. And then I was sitting in my house and I said, you know what? I need to figure it out. Right. So filing for bankruptcy is not an option. I owe to my children, to my son, that I'm successful. I don't know how, but I got to figure it out. And I did. Right, so then the following years, like we made more money, and then next year we had 7 figures for the first time and all of that. And I said, I figured it out for myself, and then nobody that I can touch should ever go through the same ordeal. And when you think about it, the World Bank, and I learned that later, like when I got into I got into a coaching program called the Strategic Coach with Dan Sullivan. And there's an exercise in there, it's called the unique ability, that teaches you, like, what are you good at, right? We all have this, you have this, Bill, right? So I bet you that you have something like a skill or a talent that your friends know you for. They come at you to you for advice. Your colleagues know you for that strength, but you don't think it's anything special because it comes so easy to you, so natural to you. That is your unique ability, right? And part of finding that was doing the Kolbe assessment, And the power of that, I said, that's, I want that. I want everybody to know, I want to know how that works. And I want everybody to feel that liberation that I had on that day, where I felt, you know what? It is not me, right? It's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
I should have not gone to the World Bank in the first place. The reason why I was successful at Berlitz is because they valued getting right to the point, getting the revenue in, like, a shortcut where you can, right? Client over internal meetings kind of thing, focused. I had my freedom. I could totally be myself. My boss had me on a long leash, right? So had all the support, that I needed. At one point, I needed $1 million in cash to actually finance that turnaround, which we did. We brought the company into profits within 4.5 months, right? But I also needed that support from my boss, saying, I need that cash infusion right now in order to move. And I got all of that, right?
Sure.
At the World Bank, it's all about procedure and process and politics.
Right.
Right, which as a shortcutter, somebody who is good at shortcutting procedures and processes, right, and protocol, probably the worst environment to be in. So it wasn't my qualification, it wasn't lack of knowledge, it wasn't lack of the belief and of the mission of the World Bank. It was that the way I naturally work to do my best was totally the opposite of what the World Bank needed in that position, given that environment. And that was a mismatch. And at that time, I wasn't aware that there was a tool to measure it. That's what Kolbe does.
Right. Okay. So there's a lot of measurement tools out there, DISC, Myers-Briggs, Kolbe. What is Kolbe? What does that focus on that maybe some of these other tools don't?
Okay, so your mind has 3 levels. I actually think it has 4 levels, right? So, most people think in terms of 3 levels, which is the cognitive, what you know, and then it's the affective of how you relate with others, what your value systems are, what your beliefs are, right? What your motivation is. That is the affective part of the mind, and then you have the cognitive, which is how you would naturally take action if you had the freedom to be yourself. So when you take other assessments like DISC or Insight, 2 assessments that I like a lot, or even Strength Finder, what they measure is the affective level, your values, your beliefs, how you relate with others, right? That kind of thing. And what motivates you, that's on the affective level of the mind. And above that is what you know, your experience. So if you want to change what you know, it's easy, right? You can take a training course, right? You get education, go to a seminar, right? Do the accreditation course online, Udemy, whatever you want, but you can learn and you got it, right? If you want to change your behavior and your values, right? Those change over time, but you condition yourself, right? So, for example, have you ever smoked?
No.
Do you like coffee?
I stopped, but I do.
Okay, black coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, was there a time when you craved it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so when you can you remember the very first time you had coffee?
Oh, yes.
Did you like, wow, that's the stuff, man, that's so great?
Not really.
Okay, what happened?
Well, all right. Yes, but it was because of the large sums of sugar. And
okay, so then my question, so if coffee was so horrible that you had so much sugar into it, why did you condition yourself to like it?
Yeah, it woke me up. Right? Like, and then it just felt, I
could have had Red Bull.
I feel like that what happened with me, right, is if I have any coffee, and I do maybe once in a great moon, it is only black coffee, but it was the sugar and the cream that I really liked at the beginning.
Okay, so the sugar, the caffeine that gives it a rush.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But you didn't like it at first, so you
But I still did it.
you condition yourself. Why? You could have bought like a can of Red Bull.
Yeah.
You could have bought caffeine, the tablets, right? You could have eaten like sugar pills, right? So you had multiple option. Why coffee? I ask the same question with people that smoke, or used to smoke. And I asked him, so if you first smoked, but when you first smoked, did you say, wow, it's so great for my body and my body feels so great? I want more of that? No, most of them said I would get dizzy, I almost had to throw up, I was felt awful, right? So why then did you condition yourself? Because you made a decision to condition yourself to like cigarettes or to like coffee or to like olives or to like hard liquor, right? Whatever it is, right? Why? Most likely because you want to be part of the group, right? Because everybody else drinks coffee. And you didn't want to be excluded in the cafeteria when everybody's sitting around, or at Starbucks sitting around coffee and have a chat, or you wanted to look like adult and mature and smoked, right? So now you were part of a group that you want to belong to. So there are needs that you have that makes you condition yourself. At work, we get conditioned. Think about it. Like, our parents condition us first, right? Based on their values. Then you go to school. Then you condition yourself based on the values of your friends. Then you go to the workplace and you recondition yourself. And if you start at Facebook or you started at a local accounting firm where you have a small booth with no exciting corporate culture. It's all about, you filling your paperwork and process. You have two different experiences, right?
Right, sure.
So based on that experience, you condition yourself to perform. We all do that over time. That's why couples, when they spend like after a few years, they behave similarly, right? Because they adjust. We all have that natural thing, but that's conditioning. And too often in our lives, we condition ourselves because it served us at that time, but now it no longer serves us. Smoking is a good example, right? It served us at one point because we were part of that in-group, we were taken seriously, we felt better about ourselves, right? But 20 years later, we know that it kills you, right? So you better stop now because, it served you for a short while, but in the long run, it kills you. The same is true for all of our behavioral patterns. So if assessments like this and insights and strength finder, which are awesome assessments, I like them, I recommend them. The Enneagram is another one. They basically measure how you relate and what your values and beliefs and motivations are at the time. So very often you take them again 10 years later, and that has shifted because your environment changed. Right? You may have stopped from the doom and gloom accounting firm, working there, and moved on to an exciting startup. Right? So now, great. So now you can be yourself, and that your entire behavior changes. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, absolutely.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
So ask me as to this: when was the last time you sat down and said, "Wait a minute, what are the values and motivations and beliefs I actually want to have?" Nobody does that.
Yeah.
It's always from the outside, right? So that is my problem with those assessments, right? It's that they measure where you are, and you take that for granted. Okay, this is me. No, this is you today. Can you make a decision? Do you have the ability to decide what your value is going to be tomorrow? Let me ask the other question. Have you ever made a decision in your life and your life has completely changed for better or worse?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah? How often can you make that decision?
What it does is I think it kind of makes you scared to try to make another one, right? So I think you immediately, or at least in my mind, when I think about it, I think, all right, I'm gonna be more conservative next time.
Okay, but
But I suppose I could make it any time I wanted.
Right. So decision making is like a muscle, right? So the more of the decisions you make, the better they become.
Sure.
Okay, and you said you failed, right? So when you think about it, what is success? Success is a result of good judgment. Good judgment is a result of experience. And experience very often comes from failure, right? So the more often you fail, you can say that I suck, I'm bad, I'm never going to get it. Or you can say, you know what, I know that is a necessary step to success. I failed, but I'm one step closer to my goal, right? So you can say that, right? But it's not, you're not going to the gym and put up some dumbbells and then say I'm fit for life, right? So you need to, so you go all the time. The same with the decision making. So most people get stuck because they stop making decisions, and they're afraid of the consequences, right? So again, the point is to the most of the other two, they measure either your intelligence, how smart you are, or your value system, both of and beliefs and motivation. Both levels change over time. The cognitive, how you naturally take action, you're born with it.
Sure.
Every parent will tell you, like, especially the parents that have two children from the same parents, the same environment, they will tell you, both of my children have their own personality, and my two kids, they're totally different, right? Why is that? Same parents, same upbringing, same kind of education, same belief system, and so on, yet two totally different personalities. We don't know why that is, so I leave that to everybody's belief system, and I'm not here to tell anybody what they have to believe, but we do know that you're born with it, right? And it doesn't go away through all your lifetime. So unlike the affective or the cognitive, that in 97% of the cases stays the same for all of your life, which is why so many people giving our education system that has not been reinvented or changed significantly over the last 150 years, why so many people feel like something is wrong with me.
Right.
And that is so not true. The system is failing you. When you need to learn, you cannot change. It doesn't change. If you want to change, that's when you get depressed. That's when it takes you more time to get things done. That's when you work harder than everybody else and still make mistakes and you don't seem to be getting anywhere, right? So instead, what Kolbe Wisdom does, and what I do with the combination of Kolbe Wisdom and strategic intervention, is to help you sculpt your job and do your work in a way that works best for you, so that you 80% of your time you're in the zone and you get things done with high energy.
Right. So how do you do that with a company? So I'm guessing that you work with organizations to do this, right? What does an engagement look like?
So the first one is you do a Kolbe A index. That's what they call, that measures your cognitive strength, which measures your 4 talents that you have that you apply to get things done, but also the sequence in which you get things done. For example, some people start their decision making or their solution finding process with brainstorming. Others begin it with fact checking. When you talk to the fact checkers, they're like, why do you brainstorm without facts? I don't get it, right? The brainstormers to go to the fact finder say, no, why do you research anything if you don't know, if you haven't brainstormed yet, where you want to go or what you want to do, right? So then others, they're charting graph first. It's like, let me see what I have and what are the similarities, and how can I put that into different manageable groups, and then I have a workflow chart and a Gantt chart and all of that, right, to get things done. So 2 different approaches. Others end their solution process with, like, how can we find a solution within the current system and fit it in? And others end their process with, how can we shake the entire thing up and make that new from scratch? And others say, how can we build up on what we already have and move forward? So we all have our ways of doing it. So that's what the Kolbe A measures, and that's the first step. And then you see how a group works, as individuals, but also are there any dynamics that can lead to conflict, right? For example, if I'm a brainstormer, which I am, and your counterpart's strength is to stabilize the situation, right? They don't like brainstorming, right? So that just leave me out, right? So the brainstormers are the ones that have the great ideas, and then the ones that are good at stabilizing the situation. The brainstormers very often call them change resistant, but there's already that judgment in that term.
Right.
If you call them, no, they're not change resistant. They're just good at stabilizing the situation. So now the conversation that we're going to reshape in the team is not like, hey, Bill, how can you be more innovative, right?
Right.
Why don't you embrace all these cool features that we're going to introduce? To, you know what, Bill? How can we, as we go through the change, right? So we still need to get operations running. Mm-hmm. So how can we use your strength to stabilize as we go through change? Mm-hmm. And then when we go through change, we have ironed out all the kinks, and then we pull you over, and we can show you like all the successes. We can give you the certainty, the proof, and then with that the confidence that operations are stable and it's safe for you to move over. Totally different conversation, right?
Yeah. So I've been to these. I think a lot of these types of things happen during an offsite workshop or some team building exercise, right? And I'm guessing that's the case with some of the work that you do.
Well, there are multiple ways. So some of my teams are international.
Oh.
So for my clients to get them like in one location is a huge cost. You need to coordinate all the schedules, and some do it, and that's absolutely prefer it because proximity is power, right? So even just you have your colleagues nearby, and you can talk through conflicts that you may have in communication, because you have different strength, they have different preferences to absorb information and share information. So you can work through that, and you can high five and hug each other, and that is a more intimate way of also overcoming that conflict. But a lot of my clients also do it with virtual teams via Zoom. And we do the same dancing and hip shaking and yelling and all of that as well, and that tends to work very, very well as well. So yeah.
All right, cool. Now, but what happens afterwards? Because I feel like there's probably this period of time where everyone meets and they get to know each other and they work better together for some period of time. But then maybe people fall back into their little normal zone. What do you recommend that people do to avoid that from happening? And maybe also to that question, does it sometimes bring change unexpectely?
Yes, it does. So the way that works, like you take the assessment, you know where you stand, you know what the dynamics are, and then there's like an all-day workshop. We're saying, this is your strength, these are your colleagues, have some conversations, understand it better, and so they leave with the understanding that we're all unique. There is no better or worse. We're all unique. Mm-hmm. I need to acknowledge that we're unique. I need to acknowledge the potential conflicts that can cause. Right, and I need to have an ongoing conversation with my team members on how we change up things. Mm-hmm. So that includes like the 3 weeks after a workshop. So I do a weekly coaching, like group coaching session. They actually get together every morning and talk about. Some teams just do it 2 times a week, but depending on, but as often as they can. And they would go say, look, I have this I have on my list, right? Here are the tasks. There's an exercise called the commitment clarifier, where you actually rate how much benefit and value to give to a commitment or a task or a project. And you would have a group conversation. You would say, you know what, yes, you wanted me to do, one of my commitments is to finish the documentation, the technical documentation. But you are good at simplifying content and messages, right? So finishing the documentation, right, will be hard for you, right? You can do it, of course, but it's not the best use of your time. Mm-hmm. So now you have a conversation with the team. Is there anybody else who would like to take on that task? Or can I remodel that task, right? Or can I split up my tasks? And for example, in one case, a client of mine, she needed to do an internal staff satisfaction survey, corporate-wide, for a Fortune 500 company. Mm-hmm. And she said, Andrew, it freaks me out. So I said, what's going on? Well, it's like, what I like is like researching, the questions and thinking through what kind of answers I will get, and then also thinking through in advance how I will analyze it and what the report will look like, then the structure. But I absolutely dread and hate the idea of going out of doing the interviews myself, right? Because I'm good at stabilizing the situation. I'm not good at having an interview where I don't know what the response will be, right? I have to just make things concocted out of thin air, right? So it's not my forte. So easy fix, right? So in the team, then they discussed that, and then somebody showed up and said, "Oh, I would love to interview all those people.
Yeah.
I'm actually good at it. I love to. And I would like to understand their problems and all of that. Can I do it?" So now you have like one person said, "I only do what I'm the best at and what I like, and where my talents are, and what I don't, where they are not, what I hate. I don't have the proper knowledge, and I don't have my strength." Somebody else who has all of that, willing to take it. So your job description within the team changes over time.
Sure.
Through a process that we call job sculpting, right? And yeah, so that is the change. It may lead to you totally getting a different assignment within the team, and you're like, but this feels so much better now, right? Because now I can use what I know. I can apply my value, motivation, and I can use all of my natural strength. That is heaven. You're 80% in the zone all the time.
That's really nice to hear that. When I actually experienced this once with a colleague of mine, he was a senior director at a company, and you went through a program similar to this and realized that a lot of people didn't have the respect for him that he was hoping. And it's because he was doing their jobs. They weren't getting to do the work because he liked being a doer.
Yeah.
And he actually took 2 steps down. And one of the people that was on his team, he now reports to. And he's so much happier in his life. Yeah. He actually took the demotion happily after that.
No, and what happens a lot is like this entire promotion system, I don't get it either. Right? But it is like, I used to be that way, right? So we always want to be the guy or the girl on top, right? And there's always somebody on top, right? So always, unless you're Jeff Bezos right now, right? But there's always somebody on top, and it's a race that never satisfies you, right? The other thing is that I call it the lawless law of diffusion of your career progression. The higher you get in the hierarchy, the less you have to do with the things that you actually love, and you need to acquire new skills. And sometimes you like that, right? So, oh, great, I did not know. It's like now as a VP, I can strategize here and there and so on. I'm really good at it. I never realized that. Sometimes you don't. Fact is, as we get promoted, nobody coaches us.
Right.
Nobody teaches us. You're a good translator, you're a good tech writer, you're a good engineer. Therefore, you get promoted. Now you're team lead. And I think like only 20% of people worldwide actually then get trained into how to be a team lead. Right? How do you manage people? How do you have conversations? Right? So that's the void that I'm filling. Right? So then there's a lot of questions and self-doubt. Will I be able to do it? I don't do anything anymore what I like. Right? So can you promise me that once I've learned all of that, I will like it? No, I can't. Right? It will take you 9 months, 2 years maybe to learn your job. Right? Most people just take 9 months. But for 9 months, you need to go through a sustained period of disequilibrium. Right? Can I guarantee that in the end of the process you will like it? No. So why not say, like, once you've tried it, why not say, you know what? Tried it. I realized I didn't like it. Maybe going a step back is not so, that serves me better.
Right.
Right? Who dares to judge you on what you want from your life? It's your life.
It's really good insight. So where is this going now, right? So do you think a lot of companies are embracing this kind of thought process right now? And how are they doing it?
Yes. So it depends on the country, right? In the US, we're definitely far further down the road in understanding the importance of the soft skills. And with the increasing automation and robots and AI, right? There will be a run, or there's already a run for the high potentials, and especially in the bigger companies. And the number one skill is to be able to collaborate and master influence on their teams, on their stakeholders, on their bosses, on their partners, on their vendors, on their clients, to make impact and move things forward. And you cannot do it with a machine, at least not today, right? You cannot do it with surveys and questionnaires, right? Cannot do it. So you've got to be able to do that in person and show empathy and master influence in a way that your team works for your purpose, but also in a way that they thrive and are happy at the job. So that's it. In other countries, I do a lot of work in Europe, and that thinking, that culture, I think they are depending on the country, 2 to 15 years behind. In China, they're, for example, definitely 10 years behind, right? In Ireland, where I live right now, it's coming now, right? So it's getting more traction, but compared to they're not there yet where the Americans are, right? So, but we're getting there. I think it's becoming more and more important.
So where is this going? How does a company take this and embrace it as a way of thinking? Like what is the change that needs to happen in order to do that?
First, this is the first thing that the teams learn when they work with me. Every team has the same problems, right? So there's not enough money, not enough budget, not enough time, not enough resources, right? So that's one, or not the right resources. And then there's the cry for we need more money, we need more time, we need more resources, whatever, right? It's never about that. So that's one of the first learnings that my teams that I work with have is it's not about resources, it's not about money, it's not about time, it's about resourcefulness. How do I use what I have for my purpose, right? How do you use that includes how do you use my strength, how do you use my team's strength to get things done, right? So as you go through the transformation, the Kolbe Wisdom enforces a positive terminology. Again, I will not say, Andrew, you are bad at organizing things. You say, Andrew, you're really great at shortcutting, right? Which is the opposite of organizing. Or, Bill, you're not good at simplifying, right? So if only you could simplify things, say, you know what, you're really good at strategizing and dealing with a lot of data, right? So where now can I use that skill? Or how can I support you? If you still need to simplify your work, how can I support you somehow, right? With either buddy you up with somebody who has that skill, a vendor, right? Or technology, or maybe even I need to use your skills somewhere else in the organization. That's where the organizational transformation takes place. And what happens is very interesting. The organization as a whole gets focused on success. Right? They get focused on what is it that we can do rather than why can we not do it. Does that make sense?
It turns into a trap if you go that way. It's interesting because I think about a typical CEO's, this is our value system that we have. It depends on what industry you're in, but maybe we value safety or we value, adopting new technology quickly. But I don't think I've seen resourcefulness on the list many times, or if at all, to be quite honest.
Because it's a tough message to break, right? Even for managers. Right. So when I go in and say, it's not resources, it's resourcefulness. It's not like the people say, oh yeah, great, fine, you get it. I need to work them through it, right? And they don't know what that means either, right? So that's where the Kolbe and the ability to master influence and the reconditioning of people comes in. So then after a while they understand, okay, I need to recondition myself. I need to learn how to use my strength better. I need to sculpt my job, right? And there's a lot of things to be done that are sometimes you don't dare to do it, right? So you, as new project manager at ABC company, will you go over to your boss and say, you know what, this job really doesn't fit my strength, and I think we should rewrite our job description, right? Which is a conversation that we actually should have, everybody should have, right? But it takes a certain amount of organizational maturity and maturity from yourself. That's why somebody like me coming in and working with both and coaching you through, so that all the players are on the same level. That's where transformation happens, and ideally it happens from the top down, right? Because the top needs to, the fish always rots from the head down, right? So same here, right? So if a team has performance issues, for example, in 95% of the cases, it's a management problem, right? And it's a management problem because the vast majority of managers have never been trained to be a good manager.
Yeah.
And some of the advice that they get is ill advice, right? So how do you do performance reviews, right? Which is the wrong course in the first place, right? We have, like, in the HR has told us in the 90s to performance people to death, right? Have you ever been into a performance management conversation and either side liked it? The managers hate it. They're like, I don't know what to do, right? And I need to figure out all those goals, and they're the same as last year, right? Sell $100 million, sell $10 million of equipment, and be a nice person, right?
Right.
It's the same conversation, and we're struggling with the same issues every year, and it doesn't matter because I cannot fire that person for whatever reason, mostly because I don't have a better replacement, right? So, and we dread in it. We got performance to manage to death, right? So taking those courses is the doing the wrong thing in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now you need that culture shift. Say, you know what? It's not about performance management, because I trust that the majority of my people want to give their best at work. They want to enjoy it, and it's my job as a manager to make that happen. That doesn't mean that there's always fun and glory all the time. Yes, you always have to do stuff that you hate, right?
Right.
But it shouldn't be 80% of your work, right? So so it has to come. It's good when it comes from the head down. What usually happens is that I meet a middle manager and they do a Kolbe A, and then the next question is that, do you want to ask your boss to do it? And then I do an A to A comparison, and they see it with amazing degree of accuracy, how they work together, what their issues are, and what they can do, how they can work better together, being resourceful. How can we work better together? How can we use our complementary or sometimes competing strength in a way that it serves the product and we're not getting on each other's nerves? For example, if you were somebody who organizes things well, and I'm a good shortcutter, you and I should never, ever, ever, ever sit in one room and think and try to develop a workflow together, right? We're going to leave that room, we're going to be frustrated about each other, right? So the way we would work together is like that you would do the workflow, and then you would give me your workflow, and I would review it in terms of where can we put in efficiencies, because I have a better natural talent for that, right? And then we can give it to a third person who is good at actually monitoring and maintaining those workflows, right? And adjusting them in a way that people are actually using it. Now we can give it to that person and say, hey, Maria, what's your opinion? What do we need to do so that people will actually embrace that workflow? And now, instead of the three of us fighting, we have collaborated in a way, we have used our strength and our time in a way that is best for us and the project and the company.
So the way you say that just sounds perfect, right? But that also means that you need to have a level of honesty about your own self and with others.
Yep.
Because if someone asks me, you used a workflow example, someone asked me to develop the workflow, and that's not something that I have the strength at. I like to cut corners or whatever. Then to admit that and suggest that someone else does it because they're better at it, and that person accept it and not feel like I'm just throwing something over the fence because I don't want to do it, that takes a pretty high performing team that understands themselves pretty well, don't you think?
Exactly, right? And that's so yes, that is part of the leader and the organization to develop an environment where everybody can contribute to the pool of meaning without negative consequences, as long as they're done in a constructive way, right?
Right.
For sure. That's why, like, I started out as a Kolbe consultant, right? And I realized, to your point, when I go into teams, there's already so much conflict and mistrust, right? That having that conversation is a little bit heavy. And it's not like, so the Kolbe terminology and framework is such that it's all positive. So because I'm not telling you, you're disorganized, Bill, right? I said, you're great at shortcutting, so how can we use that? Right? You're not saying to a colleague of yours, you just overcomplicate things, right? You're just good at systemizing, right? So how can we use that now, right? So that already takes away the negativity of it, right? So because it's non-judgmental.
Sure.
Makes sense? Still, if I've already conditioned myself to hate you, right? Right. So now I need to uncondition yourself. I condition the team and work through, like, what are the conflicts, right? So how can we resolve that? And that is strategic intervention. The reason I chose a strategic intervention, because it's the fastest, most effective way of intervening. Right. So, I used to be a consultant to the FBI's behavioral science unit, right, where we try to get into the mindset of hostage takers. And so I worked with people that actually managed to those hostage negotiators, right, to manage to convince a person who has already killed somebody, who has 7 hostages still, holds the gun next to the next hostage that needs to be killed. Now you need to convince that person to drop down the gun, surrender, knowing that most likely you will face the death penalty. So that's the kind of skill I wanted, to go into an organization and say, if you guys have an issue over how you document your processes, right? So that is easy compared to that, right? You guys, you want to learn how to sell better, right? As a team, that is easy compared to that, right? That is a good problem to have. So that's when strategic intervention comes in, and
puts things into perspective.
And sometimes that's where I start first before we'll do anything Kolbe. So let's see what we can do. And there are 3 ways of doing it. So when you have operations, when you manage operations, there are 4 areas of management that you need to have under control, which is your task and workflow processes, the people, the demographics, the skill set, age, and all of that, diversity, your formal structure, what's the salary, what's the salary band with the job description, your staff manual would be in there, like what the rules and regulations of how that organization needs to function. And the 4th one is the informal organization. That's like, how are people actually communicating at work versus what you want it to be, right? So we all know those gatekeepers, right? So where the manager has a great idea, right? And then I say, why don't we implement this, that new CMS in order to make, he or she's like totally happy about it. And then all eyes go to that one person who does not even have authority on the table and said, what do you think? Right? Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows that people. So that's the informal organization. That is, whether or not is it expected of you or frowned upon to do overtime. There are companies like, if you don't put in 10 hours a week, that's not good, right? If there's another company I work with, if you have 1 hour of overtime, that for them means that you are not capable in getting your work done within a limited amount of time. All right, so as a manager, you need to manage all 4 areas. Now the question is, if you want to transform your organization, what is the best entry point? Okay, so it's very rarely the informal part, because now it's very touchy-feely, people listen to that one person because they trust the woman or the guy, right? And now you need to tell them, don't trust them or whatever, or at least that's how it comes across. That's a difficult sell.
Wow.
So the way you transform your organization, you think through, maybe I start with on the process level, or task level. Let's do a workflow review. In that case, my consultant, my coach, whoever can touch everybody in my organization, gets the view from everyone, but it's really focused on the task. It's not threatening, even though very often it comes up. So yeah, I would do that process differently if Bill over there would do his job, right? So
yeah.
so you get that kind of information, but it's less personal.
Mm-hmm.
Or you say, what, let me see first what my strength is. My team is not communicating well. There are some dysfunctions there in the team that I need to address, right? Before I can change, implement the workflow or buy a new software. So I need to address that first. That's when Kolbe comes in, right? So you do inventory and like a team profile, and then you coach everyone through job sculpting, how they do the job better. And then with that process, the tasks and workflows already get worked on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other route is to go the official route, like how do we work on the formal organization, right? What is our career progression within the company? What are the job descriptions? How do we make the job descriptions better, right, and more meaningful? What kind of rules and regulation values do we want to reinforce, and how? Mm-hmm. What kind of culture do we need in order to be successful? That's on that level.
So if anyone wants to do this, engage with you, how do they reach out to you?
They can send me an email at Andrew@Team Lawless, like TEAM, like Team, mm-hmm. Lawless, my last name, LAWLESS. So Andrew@teamlawless.com, or go to my website, teamlawless.com. There are buttons everywhere where you can fill out a form. Send me that form, and I'll be in touch with you right away.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you very much. This is really informative conversation. I really appreciate your time, Andrew.
Thank you, Bill, for your good questions. And for the time that you gave. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I would like to send a special thank you to Scott Abel, the Content Wrangler, for introducing me to Andrew Lawless. Thank you very much for listening to this TechGenics T-Suite podcast. Please go to Apple iTunes and subscribe and rate us. It really does help. To stay up to date on the latest technology news, go to techgenics.com. That's TECHGENIX. You can also follow them on Twitter using the same name. You can follow me on Twitter using @Bill Raymond, then the letter E.